Super Tuesday. Professor Robert Patman, Damian, Newell. G'day, boys.
Hello.
Hey.
Big day, exciting day.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yes.
So I think what we'll do is we're going to have a chat about all sorts of things. Obviously, Super Tuesday results coming out right now. Very quickly, Jace, if you want to bring up that New York Times page, we'll just go through the results because I know there are going to be some people who are jumping in to see what's going on. And at the moment, it appears that obviously Biden has been given the most states, but the biggies, the two biggies for today, Texas and California. Texas, Sanders is up 29-24, and let me see how many percentage that is. That's 23% reporting, so it's not like a under 1%.
Yeah.
Well, it's still pretty. It's not bad. California results are supposed to start coming out about half an hour's time, but I wonder as well if Biden's going to win more states, but will Bernie end up with more delegates? And before I stop my initial rant, the most interesting one there, I think, at the moment is Massachusetts. They were saying that Warren probably wouldn't pick up Massachusetts, if I can pronounce that correctly. But at the moment, actually, Biden leading 34, Sanders 26, and Warren a distant third on 21%, which is terrible for her. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Elizabeth Warren is, unfortunate because I think she's fought valiantly. She's often made well-reasoned arguments, and she's been courageous. But for some reason, she's been pigeonholed as being on the left, to some degree, a bit like Bernie Sanders. But I think that Sanders' organisation and his real pulling power with young people.
Yep.
One of the things that's a real strength for Sanders is that he's been going at this since 2016. And he kept being politically active. He's played a key role in bringing into American politics people like Ocasio-Cortez.
Yep.
And this is important because he's had endorsements from people he's helped nurture.
Yep.
So I think he's been, very much in the public eye. And I think basically Warren and Bernie Sanders are in competition for the same slot on the ideological sphere. And I think Sanders has had an edge, but it's cruel on Warren, who's a very capable candidate, in my judgment.
I think that's happened all the way through. I mean, there was this false narrative that if you add up all the moderates, they overtake Bernie anyway. But actually, if you looked at the research on those moderates, a lot of them, their second choice was Sanders. So if they weren't going to be there, Sanders might have got most of their votes anyway. I think you're definitely right that they're splitting the progressive vote. I guess you got to play the same hand, though, that some of Warren's ones will also go to Biden. There'll be a percentage that'll be his second vote as well. I think Elizabeth Warren played this really badly. Yeah. When she talked about Bernie being sexist and Bernie not saying a woman can win the presidency. I mean, no one seemed to believe her, and since then, she seems to have plummeted. And in the last week, one of the major things of these two progressive politicians of no super PACs is she's taken a super PAC.
Yeah.
And now it seems that it appears from the outside, maybe I'm wrong, I guess a lot of commentators are saying this, that the only reason she's still there is to cause trouble for Bernie. She's got no path forward. She's not going to get the nomination at the convention if it goes to a brokered convention. So why else is she there?
I think it depends what the Democratic machine actually want, and I don't know if they know what they want at the moment. They're terrified of Bernie Sanders, but I think he's got some big headwinds coming as well, in the sense that he can't get the African American vote. He's got the young people.
He's got the young African American vote,
but he can't get the college educated white women. He can't get the African American vote. So I wonder. All the polls are saying that Bernie will beat Trump on paper, but that's only if he gets the people out. I mean, he's got a wonderful movement. He's got pots of cash, and he's got a great ground game, and that's where I think Biden might have a bit of a problem as well, because he's doing well today. But I mean, can he back it up with the wedge?
Well, I think what's happened with Biden is he's now got all the money that was there for Mayor Pete. All that money's gone across to Biden, and for Klobuchar's gone across to Biden. But the thing that Bernie's done is he spent 4 years building a network that can operate
Movement.
outside the mainstream media, though. So when the mainstream media portrays this idea of he's only won the first 3 states, it's not important, it doesn't matter. Yes, he's got the most popular vote, but that doesn't matter until, of course, Biden has the most popular vote for one day. Then it does matter. But because he's worked his magic outside the mainstream media, it's like he already has that ground support. He already has almost like his own infrastructure of information to get to his people.
I think the interesting thing too is the Democratic organisation were quite happy to throw Biden out the window 2 or 3 weeks ago. After Buttigieg and Bernie did very well early on, he was dead for all money.
He's their last choice.
Yeah, and that's what makes me wonder. I don't know if the Democratic organisation know what they want, do they?
I think they're anti-Sanders.
Yeah,
I think that's quite clear. And the other thing, I think Biden's. It's a good. It looks like it's going to be a good Super Tuesday for Biden. Much better than any of us could have imagined 2 weeks ago when he was on the floor.
2 days ago.
Yeah, he only just won his first primary in 3 stabs at the presidency, going back 3 decades. And I think many people thought his strength was in the South. And he, as Damian says, he clearly has got a very good connection with certainly the over 50s in the African American community.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. He's a glad hander. He's a skilled politician, a charming politician who's got the ability to appeal to quite a wide range of audiences. One thing that I think is interesting there's 2 things I'd quickly say. Firstly, I don't think Sanders will be surprised by this. He was asked, he was kind of cautioning his followers the other day after the South Carolina result. He said, look, we're going to lose some. You've got to be realistic about this. We're not going to win them all. He said, the question is, we've got to win enough to keep going. So I think from Sanders' point of view, if he can win California, which is 415 delegates, if he can get his nose in front in Texas, and he's going to win possibly in Colorado. He's won in Vermont. He's won in both Colorado and Vermont. He's not going to win as many as Biden tonight, but he may win some big ones, which enable him to keep going. Now, the reason, that's my second point, is the longer this goes on, Sanders is a good political infighter. I'll give you an example of this. Last weekend, many of you may have noticed there was a story that was covered in CNN by Anderson Cooper about the fact that Sanders' campaign was being tacitly supported by the Russians.
Yeah.
And he was called into the studio, and he revealed that he had been briefed by US intelligence a month before, and he'd also been asked to keep it confidential, as you do if you see US intelligence, and he did, but the media got hold of the story, and therefore he felt free to comment on it.
Yep.
What was extraordinary, Anderson Cooper expected, I thought he treated Mr. Sanders very fairly, but clearly, what many people expected was that he'd be on the defensive, but he quickly pivoted from being on the defense to the offense within 30 seconds. He said, if Mr. Putin's supporting me, that's bad news for him because he's an autocratic thug, and if I become president, there'll be no more foreign interference in American affairs. Now, what's the significance there? First of all, he made Trump look like a Putin lackey who is not capable of protecting the American national interest. Secondly, he was, in a way, I think, serving notice to his Democratic rivals that he can't be easily pigeonholed as anything less than patriotic. So I think the longer this goes on, those sort of skills will come into play. And Mr. Biden does have a track record of making gaffes. So I think he's going to have a good night. And I think it's partly because of the Klobuchar and also Buttigieg pulling out, and also that fabulous endorsement he got from Beto O'Rourke in Texas. These are all important developments, and he's benefiting from them. But this is a long race.
Do you think also that the counter to that with Bernie is we've seen him, for example, they asked for his medical reports, which I think was a pretty fair question. The man is of an age, and he's just had a stent put in, and he's just had a heart attack, and they asked for his medical. Normally, Bernie Sanders would give those, and he just said no. He just says, can't make me, essentially, which I thought was very Trumpian of him. And I just wonder how many of these norms have been broken down, how much of the American political system was based on honour. And these days that's gone. And it really, I was kind of surprised that Bernie didn't just shell out. Everything about him is very, very honest, transparent, and forthright. And that was the first glimpse I've seen of him where he just said no.
I wasn't aware of that.
I think Damian's absolutely right. I was surprised by it, but I think the context, Damian, is that he was feeling defensive because lots of people were commenting on his age. Before Biden reappeared, everybody was going on how old he was, particularly the Democratic establishment. But of course, one thing about Biden's resurgence, which is really helping Sanders, Sanders is only a year younger than Sanders.
Yeah.
So Biden's only a year younger than Sanders. So in a sense, that's now taken the age thing off the agenda for Sanders, and they will be competing, I think, on in age terms and on a more level playing field than if, for example, Pete Buttigieg was the major rival. Then I think Sanders would be very much on the defensive.
There's going to be a really interesting dynamic now because on one hand you've got, I said before we started, I'm actually quite impressed with the Democratic Party that they fluffed the Russiagate. And they managed to stuff that up. Then they had the Ukraine, they stuffed that up. It's like this political party couldn't, organise orgy in a brothel or something like that. But then in the space of 36 hours, my understanding is with some phone calls from Barack Obama, they got behind Joe Biden like nothing else and have given him this push. And so now, though, I'm thinking it's going to be really interesting to see if you've got this full establishment now candidate in Biden, and you've got the complete opposite in Bernie Sanders. And if you get to now 2 people on the debate stage, it's actually now going to be really interesting because what it is people of America, do you want the politics of the past or the way it's always been or going back to it, or do we want politics of the future?
But Bernie is part of the establishment. This is the thing. When they start talking about the establishment politicians, Bernie's a multimillionaire. He's got many properties, and he's been in politics for a hell of a long time. He is now part of that establishment. I think. Sorry to interrupt.
Did you hear him talk about his houses the other day?
No.
He went, "I've got a house in Vermont. I've got a house in Washington DC." And he's basically got a house, a cottage that he inherited on a lake that he holidays in. That's his many houses. The 2 places he works and a little summer place.
But when you're starting to talk, about the working class, you know what I mean? He's not working class. So he's got to be careful with that. I also think that the Democratic Party here, as you say, a couple of calls from Obama and look what's changed.
Yeah.
I totally believe that's happened as well. But the thing is, I think they've got to be really, really careful because if they are seen as ganging up on Bernie, it's playing into his hands. It's exactly what he wants because he'll just say, look, and he said it. He says, look, they're trying everything. They're throwing everything at me. And the danger there for the Democrats is if Bernie doesn't get the nomination, his voters will stay at home and Trump will win. Well, there's no doubt in my mind.
You said Bernie couldn't get the older black vote. Biden can't get the youth.
But just come back to a couple of points Damian's made. I think with respect, Damian, I think Sanders does have an anti-establishment persona. I take your point. He's a millionaire. He's got 3 houses. He's been in politics 30 years as a senator. So in that sense, he is part of the political establishment. But there's another sense in which he isn't. He's the only candidate offering without equivocation funding of public education, particularly people doing a degree, first degree. He's also advocating comprehensive healthcare, that healthcare is a right, not a privilege. That is a big... most of the other contenders are very hesitant about that. They believe it can't be funded. And he's also... This is a big point, and this appeals right across the political spectrum. He wants to see big money taken out of politics. He wants people who are born in humble circumstances to be able to run for office. And in short, he wants to see publicly funded elections. All these things he's advocating are quite radical in the American context, but not outside it.
Exactly. Within the rest of the world, it's common sense.
Yeah.
And the other thing in his favour is he's been very, very consistent over his entire political career.
Well, that's right. And he has a very clear agenda. And that's why, coming back to your point, Pat, the race is now narrowing. And in the short term, it looks like, Joe Biden's had a really good night. But we all know that politics, as one ex-prime minister said in the UK, A week is a long time in politics. We've seen Biden's fortunes turn around dramatically.
Yeah.
But as one Biden supporter said the other day, Joe can often be his own worst enemy. So he's got... This is a long race. It could be, particularly if Sanders wins in California and Texas.
Well, speaking of Texas, he's still up by 5.
Wow.
So at the moment, 29-24. Joe Biden is his own worst enemy when it comes to comments about donkey-faced women in the crowd.
Just let him talk.
But also his record, supporting the war. There's things that Bernie can point to that will actually...
Supporting the war and invasion of Iraq.
Yeah. I also think it's really interesting, the Democratic powerhouses getting behind Biden now. There are some who are saying it's almost sending a signal that we would rather have another term of Trump than have Sanders. Not saying that Biden definitely won't beat him. I don't think he'll beat him, but definitely wouldn't beat him. But it's almost like if we have to take the risk of Trump again or Sanders, they would rather have Trump, because then all of their money in politics, all of their lobby jobs after politics, that all stays. But Sanders in there, potentially, that all goes.
Yeah, I mean, Sanders makes no bone, he doesn't have any reservations about saying that he'll be going after the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah.
He wants to see action on climate change. Big issue. Again, another radical departure. He's absolutely unequivocal about the need for America to become a leader in fighting global warming. He said that we need to show leadership with the most powerful country in the world. So I think that's, it's going to be interesting to watch the dynamics of this after Super Tuesday. I think it's far from over. And the other thing is, I think the polarization that we're seeing, where increasingly it's seen as if it is seen as a Sanders-Biden race, we don't know that for certain yet. But if that's the trend that emerges, I think that Sanders will be more than able to hold his own in a sort of toe-to-toe contest, particularly in debates. And
I think he's very,
I think it'll be amazing.
Yeah, he's a very articulate, intelligent man.
Very sharp.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him and Trump on stage. I think that would be absolutely brilliant. Whereas Biden, I don't think would go toe to toe with Trump in a debate.
The other thing is that Trump is very, Trump's a clever guy in the sense that...
Is he?
Well, no, not intellectually clever, but he's streetwise in politics.
Got some nous about him.
Yeah, precisely. He's shrewd rather than clever. And what he's been doing, he's been saying, if you watched his social media, oh, Bernie, don't let the Democratic establishment take it away for you. We think, you're an honourable guy and all the rest of it. Of course, he doesn't think that.
No.
And he keeps saying that he's delighted Bernie's been doing well. But I think that's disinformation. I actually believe the Trump people would much prefer Biden or someone like Bloomberg as the opponent. Because I think... Sanders is in a position to really take Trump on the fundamental issues.
Well, and this is the history when we talk about you can judge Biden on his record as well. And there's just enough of a whiff of controversy around him, whether it's Hunter Biden, living as an artist in a $12,000 a month apartment driving a Porsche, even though nothing wrong with that, but there's enough of a whiff of some things of controversy around him to throw at him. Much more difficult to do that with Bernie. And where Trump is a master is throwing shit and having some stick.
And he's really stirred it up in the Democratic Party. Yeah. And he's made them really, if anything, he's got the establishment really, he's been prodding a raw nerve. By praising Bernie, it's actually fueling the worst fears of the Democratic establishment. It seems to be, anyway.
Well, see, the other thing I find quite amazing is, the Democratic nomination started off as the most diverse as we've ever seen, and it was the League of Nations, wasn't it? I mean, every area was covered, and we're down to two old white guys.
But even though he's saying that, and I agree, and it's slightly funny. Bernie is in a different mold from any other old white guy there's been. And we were talking before, not a socialist Democrat, but a
social Democrat. He's right of centre of the Labour Party in the UK, probably. On the right of the... He is a social democrat. He always compares... When people ask him where his political inspiration comes from, he always refers to Scandinavia, Sweden, countries like this.
People refer to him as FDR as well.
He's a big FDR fan.
Yeah, and it's fascinating getting online. I'm sure you've done this, Damo, as you're talking to people in America. And I had even people who like Bernie Sanders, they're hearing that narrative that he's not electable. And I have... I'm sure we all have seen the research, read the research, that in all those electability, likability, he comes out on top and all of those things. I had one just the other day, and I'm sure this makes complete sense to us Kiwis. It's like where Bernie Sanders is, what he's offering, our last right-wing, quote-unquote, right-wing Prime Minister, John Key, supported interest-free student loans, working for families package, same-sex marriage. These are our right-wingers. You Americans need to understand this is not far left. This is actually the norm for the rest of the world.
But it suits their narrative. I mean, it pigeonholes them. It suits their narrative. They compare it to Venezuela and all the other, failures. And that I mean, Trump is very, very good at marketing. His 3-word catchphrases. His nicknames, they just catch. And I mean, that's marketing 101. If there's one thing he is good at, it's that. So it gives them that narrative and it suits them. It doesn't make sense and it's not necessarily true, but I think truth sailed a long time ago in America.
It'll be interesting to see whether, that whole when they go low, we go high, and then that changed to when they go low, we go lower. What Bernie would do against Trump, or what Biden. I think Biden would go low. I think we've seen that against Trump. I don't know. It'll be interesting if there was a clash of Bernie versus Trump, how that would pan out. We're probably getting ahead of ourselves because we're still talking primaries, but
my own sense is he gave a glimpse of his approach to tackling Trump in an interview recently on CNN. And he said that one of his major tasks would be to point out the discrepancy between what Trump has promised and what he's actually delivered.
Yeah.
And I think he would probably stick to the issues in that sense.
Yeah.
And
there's plenty there, isn't there?
Yeah.
There really is.
Massive. I mean, he gave a litany just in a 55-second soundbite of all the promises and the reality. And there's a huge discrepancy.
That's the other thing that Trump does brilliantly. He makes it a cult of personality, and no one talks about actual infrastructure or healthcare or anything like that. The other thing, just on healthcare, I think that where it may really play into Bernie's hands is with COVID-19. Suddenly, healthcare for everyone is going to be, we're 18 months away from doing anything serious and meaningful about that. That obviously is going to play into the hands of Sanders.
Yeah, and
that's a really interesting point.
It also makes things like early voting and stuff. I heard a commentator today say there has been early voting because people don't want to go into groups of people for coronavirus. And early voting in these states should be helping Sanders. Although looking at it again now, Jace, do you want to bring that up? It's quite a swath of purple. Purple is Biden. So basically, Biden's been awarded Alaska, Arkansas, Minnesota, North Carolina,
Minnesota,
Oklahoma.
unfortunately, from Bernie's point of view, not for Biden's, it's a great win, but Minnesota's a really important state. So
Tennessee and Virginia, Virginia, isn't it? Yeah, Virginia. And Sanders has been awarded Colorado, Utah, Vermont, obviously, and he is projected to win Texas, and Biden's projected to win, what's ME? I was going to say Maine. Is that Maine? I think that's Maine. And Massachusetts.
So what does this mean for
Maine.
Warren? She's done and dusted, isn't she?
Well,
I think so.
But Warren, but the thing is, right, Warren has been saying for a long time, play the rules. We could get into that debate as well, but because they didn't play the rules and Bloomberg wanted to come onto the election stage, they changed the rules, the Democratic Party with that one. But she's been saying, she never would have thought she would have won any more than Massachusetts, surely. So she was basically going to the convention with one win under her belt at best. Is that really any different from going to the convention with no wins under your belt?
I think she'll come under pressure, though. Because
By
the
who,
other thing
though?
is...
Because the establishment would love her to stay in,
Of course,
because she's
but-
splitting the progressive vote.
But she is actually, until that argument with Bernie about what he said in 2018, they were supposed to be very close friends. And Sanders often used to say great things about her. He's gone a bit quiet on that front since that argument. But I think there will be discussion between the two camps.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think he'll be looking for... He's in a position perhaps to make overtures to her and say, look, is it sensible to continue? Why don't you join the team and pitch in with us in some shape or form?
A running mate.
No.
I think it'll be Stacey
Too
Abrams,
much.
as you say.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she, and also he'll want someone younger,
Yeah.
and he'll want someone who could look, if anything happened to him in office, or after he served one term, someone who's been in power as a vice president, who may then be in a platform for running for presidency.
The Apprentice.
Yeah.
I think this is my perspective and opinion. If you want to see everything wrong with Elizabeth Warren as a politician, she was on Ellen a couple of days ago, and it is the most cringeworthy, it's just, you can sit there and go, oh, you are the consummate, not politician like you do well in politics, but smarmy. It really doesn't work. But you watch her on the stage against Bloomberg, and you go, holy crap, I would follow that woman to the end of the earth. But those moments, she made her name against bankers, and those moments are few and far between.
I think you've put your finger on a really important ingredient that we often see in politics, which is you can have a first-rate intellect, and Warren's got a first-rate intellect. She took Bloomberg apart in that debate in a spectacular fashion, but she also doesn't have good political judgment, and she doesn't seem to be streetwise.
Right.
And so having a first-rate intellect doesn't mean you're a first-rate politician. In fact, formal intellect can be a barrier sometimes to being an intuitive, smart politician.
And so that's why Trump's doing so well. He doesn't have the hassle of intellect getting in the way.
I think that's probably the biggest understatement of the day
he's
so
not
far.
bad at pushing the right buttons in terms of...
I just think there's so much dumb luck involved. I'd like to give him some credit, but I just think he's dumber than a bag of hammers.
Well, I think he is more ruthless. I mean, let's be quite clear. He's acted without constraint as president, and he should have been impeached with witnesses. He got impeached and he got exonerated.
And that's the thing I was saying about the Democrats. No, they haven't been able to do anything.
But I mean, when you've got the federal government coming out and saying that the House can't enforce subpoenas, that's not really the Democrats' fault.
No,
they ticked the boxes, they played by the rules, and there was nothing really more that they could do. I think what the Americans are learning is how much of their political system was honor based, because when you see a man without honor, he's unstoppable, and
it's true.
It's
interesting.
And he's, let's be quite clear. The New York Times, they've been a chronicle of his lies, and I think they exceed more than 10,000.
16,000 since he's been in it. The average is about 9 a day.
So I mean, this guy's shameless. As the New York Times said, he lies about his lies. I mean, he can't even keep the version correct.
No.
And and the fact is, I suppose that gives you certain advantages.
Right.
He's a populist. He says he doesn't believe in climate change. And when someone said to him, but 98% of climate scientists in the United States do, he said, well, he came out with a line, who believes experts,
Oh, and he knows, I mean, I've seen a montage put together, I'm sure, that he knows the most about anything. He doesn't try and survive. I think politicians, certainly in New Zealand and the UK, they try and survive a news cycle. He only ever tries to survive a minute. He only ever tries to survive that minute. And because none of the American journalists are able or willing to call him, with very, very rare exception, on his lies, he gets through because no one challenges on it. I mean, those interviews that he has in front of the chopper on the lawn there, you just want to sit there and pull him apart, point by point, fact by fact, but you can't. And he walks away, and that's it.
The other thing about this anti-establishment thing is people are saying that Sanders is sort of the Democratic version of Trump, not in the way he carries himself, but the way he gets around it. I think that's a dangerous path to go down for a couple of reasons. The first is when Trump came out, there was no heroes left in the Republican Party. In the Democrats, there's still Obama. He still has a halo. He still is a hero. Also, when Trump came out, there was an innate distrust amongst the Republicans and his supporters of the media. There's not an innate distrust amongst the Democratic supporters of the media. In fact, the media is where they find their sources to talk out against Trump. So I think there's a couple of things going on that make Sanders sort of the anti-establishment person, but he's not the counterpart to Trump directly.
No, and I think the other thing is, I think Trump hasn't been able to deliver on his promises about draining the swamp. I mean, he presented himself. I mean, it's laughable. I think Barack Obama put it nicely. He said, you always have to judge someone by, how do you judge what a person's going to do? Partly your judgment's based on what they've done. And you look at his record, he's been anything but a supporter of, if you like, the working people. And now he presents himself as the champion of them. Yeah. So there's a degree of phoniness.
But they buy it.
It's not just that they buy it, they get shat on and they buy it again. So when the tariffs came in, the farmers moved away from him. The last research I said, 83% of the farmers still support Trump. It's like they've actually bought it, they've suffered the consequences of it, and then a huge overwhelming part of them have bought it again or continue to.
It's the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
It's just, he's peeing on their leg and he's telling them it's raining. And they just keep buying it. And I mean, what happened to the Republican Party? The party of law and order. It's like,
but yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, but your analogy about it both being anti-establishment figures and Sanders being the equivalent of Trump, but on the left, I think you're absolutely right to question that.
Yeah.
Because I think
it's a dangerous place to.
I think Sanders is a serious politician with a consistent, clear agenda, and you can't say that about Mr. Trump. He's all over the place, and he changes his mind from day. And I also get a sense that although Sanders is clearly anxious to win the presidency, because he has a clear agenda and because he seems to have a genuine interest in encouraging young people, he doesn't seem so self-absorbed. He doesn't seem to have the same ego problem. So I think when he talks about taking on the establishment, he's looking in it in very much a political rather than personal way.
When you talk about young people, when Obama was in, I wrote I wrote a piece on my blog, and it talked about, Democrats will win the next 4 or 5 elections pretty easily there, because since Barack Obama's been in, they've now secured and got the youth, they've secured and got the minority groups, and they've secured women. And then, in all their wisdom, they thought they'd bring along Hillary Clinton, who young people didn't want to vote for, minorities weren't that much of a fan of. And the thing with Sanders, I think, is if they screw him at the convention, and we should talk about those possibilities, but if he goes in with, say, the leading number of delegates, and we're going to have to wait and see that, because there is a resurgence behind Biden, you got to say that. But if he did, and they took it off him with super delegates, they're gonna lose the next 5 or 6 elections, because the youth are going to go, nah, done with this. I'm going back to what do kids do today? Skateboarding and hacky sack.
Just like to point out that Bernie's just managed to squeeze out the lead. I think all of a sudden he's just managed to scrape in.
What are we talking about?
As
total delegates.
Bernie's just managed to push up above Joe, above
It's
Biden.
very close at the moment, though,
Right,
isn't it?
total
Which
delegates.
shows the sort of polarization we've been talking about.
Yeah. But if they brought in Hillary Clinton, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton and those backroom people rigged the way of doing it, in my opinion, and I think many other people's as well.
Yeah.
And then they lost all those people. They've got a chance to get them back in Bernie. Does that mean he's guaranteed to beat Trump? No. But if they screw them over, I was wrong about Obama in the next 10 elections. I could be wrong again, but I wouldn't be surprised if the GOP were in there for 3 or 4 cycles.
Don Jr.'s sitting there waiting.
I was just thinking a former member of the Clinton administration, Robert Reich, who was a former Labour secretary, he wrote a very interesting opinion piece in the Washington Post recently, and he surprisingly was very supportive of Sanders, and he said we really should get over this anti-Sanders diatribe and look at who can beat Trump.
Yeah.
And he said it must be decided. I mean, he didn't openly come out for Sanders, but he said the candidate the Democrats should be backing is the one who emerges from a competitive primary race with the most delegates.
Yeah.
And secondly, looks like the best contender to defeat Trump.
My only concern with Bernie, bless his heart.
Literally, his heart.
Yeah, well, that too.
His freshly stented heart.
Yeah, can he win the Senate back? Because I think he can go toe-to-toe with Trump. I think he can possibly even beat Trump. But I don't know if he's going to be marketable at the top of the ticket to take back the Senate.
Are you suggesting, therefore, he could be a lame duck president if he got in there not able to do anything?
Well, I mean...
A bit like Obama was in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I think a lot would... I think Damian's raised a really important question. I think part of the answer may be in the choice of running mate. If Sanders got the nomination, that would be critical for him. He needs to have a dynamic, youngish running mate who looks like they can spread the appeal.
AOC.
Too young. She could be the first woman. If it went through following Sanders, she could be the first woman president in a couple of rotations, potentially.
But at the beginning of this conversation, I think you said, Pat, it may be possible tonight that Sanders emerges with more delegates, but Biden wins more states.
Yeah.
And I think that may be a real possibility, which will leave the race, actually, for those of us who enjoy a competitive race, nicely poised.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm someone since the last. I mean, if you look back on my blog, the last election, I actually said the only person that can beat Trump, when there was lots of Dems in there, is Sanders. And so from back then, I've been on the I was going to say the Bernie train. I've been feeling the burn. But I have to say now, I'm really interested, like yourself, and I kind of think, you know what, with a massive change in any kind of almost foundational structure, this kind of way politics has been done for so long. I heard someone say the Bernie team should be talking like they're 20 points behind. They should be acting like they're 20 points behind. They are going to have to come up against everything and surpass it to be successful. So I kind of go, the establishment getting behind Biden, I'm like, well, that's the only way that Bernie's ever going to win. And you know what? Probably the only way he should win is up against a huge wall, not just walking through, because it's a massive change coming if he gets in.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. And I think Sanders himself has no illusions about the task ahead. I think one of his problems is managing the expectations of some of the people working for him, who probably thought they was just going to steamroller his way to the convention and get the nomination. And I think
they're in their own wee filter bubble, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of people around him who are very young in politics, full of enthusiasm, work all extraordinary long hours. And I think Bernie's got the job of saying to them, look, this is a long haul.
Yeah.
And,
it's not a sprint, it's certainly a marathon.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fascinating contest. I do feel that Biden is vulnerable in a longer contest. And I feel that Sanders, is streetwise. He's a bit of a street fighter, Sanders. I mean, he's got a clear agenda, and people depict him as a bit of an ideologue. But he's also not above, pressing the right buttons in a debate. And I noticed with Bloomfield, he went straight. If you watched it, Bloomberg, I should say, if you watched that at the beginning, he's the first one out the blocks, and he immediately attacked the search and frisk controversy that Bloomberg was involved in. So again, he's not above laying a glove on somebody in a debate.
He's the kind of guy that people look at him and think he'd be shouting at the kids to get off his lawn, sort of thing. But there's something about his curmudgeon-ness that is I quite like. Although he's also obviously got a big heart. But I saw a little comment with him the other day, a freshly stented big heart, where
I think they call it engorged.
He was like, he's very difficult for him to be influenced, and he doesn't play the game. And I saw him in an interview going, I'm not the kind of person that brings up people and say happy birthday. I don't pass on plaudits. And he talks about himself saying it's a failing for him, but he doesn't play the games just in life in general. So it would be really interesting to see someone like that in politics who kind of rejects that way of quid pro quoing and that kind of thing, and how that would turn out. I mean, it could be terrible, but I don't know.
But thinking about this race, I've just been reflecting on something that Damian said, which I think is terribly important, which is the coronavirus thing.
Yep.
Often in politics, destinies are decided not by people's agendas, but by how you react to unanticipated events. Think of political careers that have been made or unmade by unanticipated events, whether it be 9/11 or anything else. And I have a feeling, and I agree with Damian, I think this coronavirus, and particularly the inept way that Mr. Trump has handled it so far.
Did you catch today's news? That Trump has donated a quarter of his presidential salary.
Oh, $100,000.
Yeah, $100,000 to the fighting of coronavirus, because it wasn't about him.
I thought he donated all his salary to charity, but apparently not.
Someone says, I just wish he'd stop playing golf.
On it though, the point that I think you guys are making, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, and I have actually heard a commentator in America talk about this as well, that free universal healthcare means people can go and get checked for coronavirus. I heard a story of a guy who had a $3,000 bill because he went and got checked for coronavirus, and it cost him $3,000. If you are lower socioeconomic, not even that, if you're middle class and you have the opportunity of, you've got a bit of a cold coming on, do you go and spend $3,000 on getting tested, or do you not? You probably choose not. And you might find, I'm assuming this is the hint between the Bernie Sanders has this argument that if we have free healthcare, pandemics will be lessen. And it will be interesting to see in places that do have it, like everywhere else in the world, if it'll hit them less or less hard than it will America, and how their medical system works.
I saw the tip was if you're not very well off is to, and you think you've got corona, is to cough on a wealthy guy and then get them go get tested, and then you find out for free.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's been an absolute inept operation so far for the States. I mean, you look at somewhere like South Korea, they've got drive-through testing now for coronavirus, and they send you your results within a couple of days. And they're looking to test between 100 and 200,000 people. And last total I heard from the States was somewhere at 1,200. So it gives you an idea of how inept it is. And when you've got the leader of the free world. And this has been really interesting, I think, also, in the sense that we would normally look to America to lead the way with this. In this situation, we'd look to the richest, the most well-funded and, well-organised country in the world to kind of lead this charge. They're absent. And not only are they absent, but, Trump is out there, contradicting the experts left, right and sideways.
So they're not only absent, but they're making it worse.
They are making it worse. And as I say, this is going to be big.
Maybe we do a quick update, because I've just seen on my phone come through from CNN that Massachusetts has been awarded to Joe Biden. Do you want to bring up the New York Times? New York Times hasn't quite done that yet. Just jump back one from there. And we haven't seen California yet, but in Texas, we can't see the Texas results from that one. We need the big screen.
Sanders still up.
Texas 29-25 to Sanders with, did I see 93%? No, 34%. So 34% reporting.
That'll be big if he gets that.
Yeah, because that's what they've been saying all the way through, the two big things from today. So in other words, a lot of people have been saying this will be a wash. Both sides will be claiming various victories if he wins. But most people have been saying, most commentators have been saying, it's all about Texas and California. What will now be interesting is to see how the media disseminates this, because when Bernie was doing really well, they were saying things like the popular vote didn't matter. After South Carolina, when Biden took the lead on the popular vote, all of a sudden it was like, well, he's got the popular vote. If Biden has the most number of delegates, they'll be telling Bernie to drop out. But when Bernie had the most number of delegates, it was like, we're going all the way to the convention. It will be interesting to see what gets spun out of this, and how little impact it'll have on Bernie's supporters, because he's got his own networks.
Well, I think the interesting thing about this contest, and we mustn't be grudging here, Biden's obviously done very well.
Yeah.
Is the fate of one person we've already mentioned, Elizabeth Warren, but also Michael Bloomberg.
We haven't mentioned him much, have we?
He said he's going all the way to convention, which might be bad news for Biden.
Yeah, that'll help Bernie, for sure.
Because I think Bloomberg entered the race as part of the Democratic establishment, or DNC leadership's desperate bid to prevent Sanders getting the leadership.
Well, I think Biden was the last choice. The establishment were looking at Buttigieg, and they were looking at Klobuchar, and they were looking at Bloomberg, and actually the person they, as you said before, kind of were throwing under the bus is the person they've now rallied around.
Yeah. But so it'd be very interesting. I mean, Elizabeth Warren and Michael Bloomberg, their role will be interesting.
So Massachusetts has gone, they've called it now, Biden 33%, Sanders 27%. That surprises me a bit that Biden took that over. That'll be a celebrating point for the Biden camp. But Warren 22%. So, long way third.
Yeah, I think she's
got to step out, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what about Bloomberg? I mean, he got 4 from American Samoa, and I think each of them
he won the territory, didn't he?
Yeah, each of them woke up with $1,000 under their pillow.
Well, the good thing about Texas is Bloomberg has been running a lot of Spanish-speaking ads in Texas, along with Sanders. So where is it at the moment? Texas, Bloomberg's got 18%, and
quite a bit.
Sanders is 29%. So, but if Bloomberg's put all the money in and focused on the Latino vote, and still has a double-digit loss to Sanders, that's great news for Sanders.
But how abhorrent is it that Bloomberg can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, he had one debate. He wasn't even on the ticket until today. He had one debate. He was absolutely taken out, and given the rounds of the kitchen. But he, you talk about draining the swamp. I mean, he is the epitome of the swamp. I mean, you spend $500 million and suddenly you're there. I mean, he's got no runs on the board. It's embarrassing.
Yeah,
a huge sense of entitlement, though. I mean, here was someone who just wanted to stop Sanders, and he's a Republican, actually. I mean, most of his life.
Republican mayor.
Yeah, Republican mayor. And, obviously he felt, I suppose when you're very rich and very powerful, many people do your bidding. He probably felt that he could hire a whiz team of young guns to help him through. They'd whip him into shape for the first debate. I mean, it was scandalous. He was allowed to actually go into the first debate on the basis of a 10% poll standing. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's literally buying your way. Well, I mean, first of all, spending 150 million plus on adverts, which gave him the 10% standing in the poll, which in turn enabled him to go into the debate. I mean, the whole process seems seems extraordinary to me.
It's a circular firing squad too. I mean, I've heard it a million times, said. But I mean, this whole primary. I mean, they spend all their time telling, the people of America why not to vote for each other, and someone comes out at the end. But I mean, they're so damaged.
Yeah, and that's they're giving all the ammunition to Trump. Yeah. And I think that you could see at the start of this when there was 427 delegates or nominees, candidates, that they weren't doing that. But as they get closer and closer, and it appears to me that as the rest of them realised that Bernie was taking lead, all of a sudden they got a bit dirtier.
Well, it was almost too late by the time they were all wrapped up in each other, and they just let Bernie slide on through those debates.
Have a look at the spend here. So this is the spend for the 2020 race. So I'm interested to see that. Hello, no thanks. I'm interested to see that Donald Trump has spent $60 million. What's he spent money on for this?
Anti-ads.
Oh, you think? Okay, but so you can see there that Bernie. I mean, you'd have to say if you were an investor, return on investment, Bernie Sanders is the best bang for the buck.
Mind you, Biden has been relatively underfunded because of his poor performance in the early primaries.
Yeah, no, fair.
He'll be getting a lot more funding now, obviously.
Well, that's my concern because Bernie's got pots of cash. I mean, he's got enough to get him right through now, and he's got the ground movement. But Biden, I don't. I mean, obviously, he is going to get a bit more from the endorsements, but it concerns me. I don't know if he's quite got the ground game that
California
Sanders has.
California is just been the first numbers are replaced. Only 2% reporting, so a ways to go, but still it's come out. Do you want to bring up the main page there, Jason, if it comes up? 27% Sanders, 19% Biden, 20% Bloomberg, 10% Warren. Wow, 20% Bloomberg. That is massive. So I suspect that will drop back a bit because it's only 2%, but
yeah.
But so there you go. And we look to Texas. We've still got 34% reporting, 29-25 to Sanders over Biden, Bloomberg 18. So what do you guys think? I mean, I guess this is a bit of a silly question to ask because it'll depend what comes out of tonight. If Sanders wins California, which he should do, and if he wins Texas, which he's tracking to do, and if they come out with, he's got more delegates at the end of the day than Biden, so he's the leader. I wanted to ask you about the convention, the brokered convention. It still seems to be the likely scenario. I mean, if Warren drops out, that helps Bernie. Bloomberg doesn't drop out, that helps Bernie. But still, likely brokered convention. And for people who don't know, they have to get 1,991 delegates to get over the yard. That gives them the nomination. So if Bernie goes in, I'm just picking numbers, not that I know, with 1,600 and Biden goes in with 1,400, then it's a brokered convention and they basically negotiate and they add votes here and add votes there, and then the superdelegates come on until someone is able to get over 1991.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think first of all, there's still quite a bit of time to go before then. I mean, yes, Super Tuesday is really important. It's 34% of all the delegates are at stake tonight.
Yep.
But there's still a sizable chunk left before we even get to the convention, and there's going to be a lot can happen. So I think it's a real possibility, of a contested convention.
Probably less of a chance it's going to happen with all those people dropping out, but still.
Yes,
yeah.
but I mean, as the race polarizes, I think either Biden or Sanders should have. They will both, I think, believe that they can, go into the convention with the edge. But it's a fascinating race, and I mean, it's. I don't know what sort of. I don't know how keen the Biden people will be on debating with Sanders.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because they've been having lots of debates, because there's lots of opportunities when this race polarizes for either of them to seize the initiative.
I think Bernie standing between Bloomberg and Biden could be a very interesting few hours of television.
Yes, I think it will be. And the other thing is, coming back to Damian's point about coronavirus, all the signs are this situation is probably going to worsen around the world in the next month. And that could be a factor that could, I think on the face of it, it would seem to reinforce Sanders' viewpoint that America simply has to get with it, as he puts it, and become a mature, developed country and provide healthcare for all.
The other thing is, I think Sanders is an absolute street fighter, as we've said before. He is a great debater. Bloomberg is just an embarrassment, and I think Biden will be kind of. I don't know. He's just. I mean, I don't question his integrity. I don't question his intelligence or political nous, but I just don't think he is very good at showing it. Sometimes very good at displaying it. Whereas Bernie Sanders is just engaging. Yeah. He's charismatic. He when he speaks, every bit of it could be used, as a historical clip. Whereas Biden, he'll just sit there and go, "Oh, come on, man." And it's like, I just don't think he has the punching power.
What about Biden constantly telling people to go vote for someone else? Have you seen that? Oh, you'll vote for someone else then. You're not voting for me. Vote for someone else. Like, I think it'll be. I think I've said this already, but the idea, and when I say the politics of tomorrow, I guess I'm being slightly arrogant, thinking this is the way it's going to go. But it would appear that if there is a movement through the youth or younger people to take it more left, in what Americans would call more left, then that would appear to be the way things are going. And to have 2 or 3 people on the stage finally be able to put forward the significant policy differences between what Biden wants to do, which is basically Obama light, go back to the way it was and steady the ship.
He's centrist. That's what Biden is. He's a centrist.
And what Bernie wants, which is a radical shake-up to a broken system. I actually think people getting out of the race long term will probably help Bernie because there's more space for him to be heard.
There's one aspect of Bernie's political persona, though, that's often missed, which he's very ambitious for America to become a global leader dealing with problems such as climate change. And he feels that America has basically retreated in that sort of area. And so, that's another thing to watch in the debates, because I think, as Damian said earlier, I mean, in a sense, you could say that Sanders is part of the political establishment, but he does have an agenda which will substantially rearrange American politics. And I think the crucial challenge for Sanders is to convince people who are sceptical. There'll be a lot of Americans who will buy into the idea that Sanders is an extremist, and they'll need a lot of convincing. Yeah. But I think continued exposure to him will help that, because I think, in a sense, he's made a rod for his own back with this democratic socialist label.
Yep.
But he's got to unpack that for American audience and reassure them he doesn't want to nationalise anything. He doesn't want to actually get rid of the capitalist system, but he wants it to work better for more people.
I have to say, there's one thing that I sort of disagree in, or either I'm not entirely clear on his message. With the whole cancelling of the, banning of the private health system, insurers, see, because that's not what we have. I mean, we have a free health system, but I also have health insurance. That's not what Bernie's advocating, is it? He's advocating just a public health system, because he's talking about doing away with the insurers. And I wonder if, I mean, like I break my ankle, I go to A&E, I need an operation on my eye, I approach a private doctor for me because I've got health insurance. Just for clarity for me, I guess, if you guys understand it better, is he advocating that then no one else will have insurance And is that one step too far?
Well, my understanding was that he wanted a system where everyone was covered. At the moment, 33 million Americans, according to Sanders, do not have any health cover at all. And those who do often go bankrupt trying to meet their bills. He cited a figure of 500,000 Americans each year cannot can't pay their medical bills. I thought he was advocating an extension of Medicare. And I thought what he was trying to do over a 4-year period was to create a system where everyone would be covered. I haven't heard, and I don't have the knowledge, quite frankly, but my impression was that wouldn't stop people who wanted additional private cover.
Well, because I guess, and maybe it's different in a workplace, because one of the arguments against Bernie that he doesn't seem to have denied is, this union that's fought hard for their healthcare is going to have it taken off them. So is that just because the workplace will be different?
That argument came up in Nevada.
Yeah.
And it didn't. He won the argument there,
right.
because a lot of people were saying, because it was Buttigieg who said that, Bernie his policy on healthcare was flying in the face of the union preferences. But a lot of rank and file unionists apparently indicated they would love a system where they didn't have to keep paying premiums every week.
The leaders of the union were against him, but all the members of the union voted for him.
As I understand it, what he's saying is by getting the health insurers out of it is if you've got Medicare for all, you if you want to top it up, fine, but they're not going to be everywhere. They're not going to be, as you say, the unions aren't going to be contributing to a monthly plan if they don't need to.
12% in California, Sanders 27, Biden 17, Bloomberg 19, Warren. However, Texas 39% in, Sanders 29, Biden 26.
It's getting close.
Bloomberg 18.
Texas looks like it's going to be neck and neck, doesn't it?
It's going to be neck and neck.
What percentage is that? 39.
39% in.
Yeah.
Hey, well, look, I think that obviously we're not going to stay here all night and watch this. And I know in California, because you can put a postal ballot in on the day of, my understanding is also it takes quite a long time to count their votes. I heard something today where at the last, in 2016, Hillary was ahead by something like 20 points at 2 a.m. And by 7 a.m, she was only ahead by 7. I mean, she still won. But so we're not here to just give out the results and sit around until they all come in. We're here to have a look at what's going on. At the moment, we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, 8 have all been called for Biden, 8 states. 1, 2, 3 have been called for Sanders. And the other 1, 2, 3 remaining, which are Texas, Maine, and California, are all leaning Sanders at the moment, but haven't been called. Although Maine is 33 all. So that could go either way as well. California 27-17, Texas 29-26. So California's looking good at 13% for Sanders. Texas, I mean, if it was a poll, it would be margin of error.
California's huge, 415 delegates.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. And
if he gets that one, that's a big.
That's going to push his delegate count up quite substantially. Although I understand the delegate margin, it depends on whether his opponents get more than 15%. The delegate ratio is affected by the percentage of each candidate.
Yeah.
So that is something. I mean, obviously, if he won, it looks like at the moment he's not going to get quite the commanding lead that he would ideally like to get most of those delegates. But he should get the lion's share.
Yeah, because the other thing to remember is it's not one takes all. So in these states where it's, let me have a look at one, Oklahoma 38-25. I mean, okay, so Biden will get what, 20% more delegates. So he's not going to get nothing out of that.
I think it's interesting too. Talking early voting, you see Klobuchar and you see Buttigieg, taking votes as well. So
just click on the view all candidates just out of interest for that, just to see. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, they're not taking a lot, but you add it up.
Yeah. Andrew Yang still getting votes. Holy mackerel. And Julian Castro, even he's still getting votes. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and not so big in that particular one, but I think is that California? No, that's Oklahoma. So in California, I mean, there's some big chunks there.
Yeah, Klobuchar 6%, Steyer 4%.
Looking at the primary contest from Joe Biden's perspective, they must be pretty upset with Bloomberg because he's taking quite a lot of votes. In California, he was 18%. 18, I
think it was. But I guess that's a question as we'll kind of wrap up this is if Bloomberg got in to stop Sanders, then where does ego meet pragmatic decision to get out?
That would have happened. That would have happened before he even
Maybe
took the ticket.
Put it this way: if it doesn't happen after today, Bloomberg could be around for a while. I mean, I think it's probably the same for Bloomberg and Warren. If they don't bail today, or let's say give them a chance to reflect and all that kind of crap in the next 24 hours, then they could be around for a while.
There's a big
yet.
difference between the two. Bloomberg has enough money to go as long as he wants. He can go on just right to the convention. I think Warren's financially constrained.
I think also it's going to be interesting to see if Sanders is the nominee, whether or not Bloomberg is going to throw his cash behind him. He said he will. And he's going to throw his operation behind him. But that's going to be interesting.
The one thing at the debates I'm really disappointed that I don't know if they ever asked. Sanders says very clearly, I will support whoever the nominee is. I will support whoever the nominee. I don't know if they ever asked Bloomberg, would you support Sanders? I wish they had of.
It's going to be interesting.
I wish they had of, because that would be a really interesting
or for that
answer.
matter, Joe Biden.
Yeah.
You know.
So the Texas results are still 28.6, 25.9. It's close though, man. It's within 30,000 votes at the moment. Sanders still in the lead, and California at...
I'm just wondering if that Beto O'Rourke endorsement of Biden will turn out to be crucial.
Also depends where they've come in as well. Like Texas, when I had a look at it earlier, they hadn't done... I always forget the name of the place. It's quite a liberal town in Texas. It's not Houston, where it's
liberal in Texas.
Yeah, well, liberal compared to. It annoys me. It's where all the comedy festivals always happen and stuff. Anyway,
are you talking about Austin?
Yes, Austin. Yeah, Austin's quite a liberal town, so it also depends where the votes have come from. All right, so we're going to wrap up now. Just before we go, Sanders 26-18 over Biden in California with 14%, 29-26 still with 40% done in Texas, and 33.2 each in Maine. They're at 33.2 to 33.2 in Maine. Other than that, it looks like everything else is basically sorted. Thank you for coming in, Robert Patman. It was good to have you.
It's been a pleasure.
Damo.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you, brother. Look, maybe we'll do some more of these in the next few months as we lead up to the election, as we educate the people of New Zealand about the real news. All right, thank you. Hey, listen, thanks for listening. Keep an eye out on the Facebook page as to what's coming up. It's been a blast. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.